With my college football schedule preview and point spread predictions videos. Today I'll be doing the Auburn Tigers. So Auburn always has a tough schedule because they have to play Alabama and Georgia every year because they're their two rivalries. But this schedule is not as tough as Auburn's schedule was when the SEC had divisions because I only see four teams on this schedule that are likely going to be top 25 teams: Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Georgia, and Alabama. And Auburn does get three guaranteed wins. I would say in the non-conference against Ball State, uh, South Alabama, which are both group of five teams, and Mercer, which is an FCS team. Although South Alabama is not a terrible group of five team, and they may be able to challenge Auburn a little bit. But starting the year on the road against Baylor won't be easy. Baylor, I do think, will be a decent team, but they're not going to be a great team by any means. So it's a very winnable game for Auburn. And the toughest two in a row on this schedule is Oklahoma and Texas A&M, both on the road. If Auburn can win one of those two games, I think that will be good for them because Oklahoma and Texas A&M, I both think are top 20 toughest places to play in college football, and Texas A&M ranked first in the SEC and returning production at 71%, and Oklahoma is not far behind them at 69%, which ranks at 10th nationally. And Auburn loses a running back at Jarquez Hunter, who was their best offensive player. And if it hadn't have been for him, they would not have beaten Texas A&M, and the Oklahoma game would not have been close because he was the star in Auburn's win over Texas A&M, rushing for 130 yards and three touchdowns. And I don't really see Auburn having a replacement for him this year. And Auburn's first bye week, I don't think comes at a good time because it comes right before Georgia. And Georgia is the game that I would say Auburn has the least chance of winning. But I wouldn't say Auburn has a 0% chance of beating Georgia because it is at home. And the last time Auburn played Georgia in Auburn, Auburn almost upset Georgia, and that was a better Georgia team than I think this Georgia team is going to be. For the first time in several uh, years, Georgia actually had some serious question marks on their roster. And they only returned 45% of their production, which is near the bottom of the SEC. But Kirby Smart is a much better coach than Hugh Freeze is, and now that Nick Saban's retired, Kirby Smart, I would say, is the best recruiter in the country. And to beat Georgia, you're likely going to need to have a good quarter back, especially for a coach like Hugh Freeze to be able to beat them. And while Jackson Arnold is probably actually better than what we saw from him last year at Oklahoma because of the injuries that he had to deal with at, at the wide receiver room and on the offensive line. He was probably still a below average quarterback. And Missouri is a game I would give Auburn a good chance to win because they almost beat them up on the road last year. And Auburn, I would say, is a top 20 place, toughest place to play in college football for sure. And Missouri loses Brady Cook at quarterback and two really good receivers, Luther Burden and Theo Weiss, which besides also having an easy SEC schedule was really the only reason that Missouri appeared good last year. And Arkansas, I think, will be a tough game for Auburn. I think Arkansas will probably be a bowl team, and I think they might have a pretty good offense. But when it comes to toughest places to play, Arkansas would be in the bottom half of the SEC for sure. And Auburn has a talent advantage over Arkansas, and they have an advantage over them in returning production, 65% to 57%. This is a game that Hugh Freeze needs to find a way to win. And Kentucky, you would think Auburn could win because Kentucky, I think, blew their chance last year to have a good team because they had an experienced offensive line and the best defense they had had in several years. And they also had what appeared to be a good wide receiver room, and Auburn beat them by two touchdowns. And Hugh Freeze has been recruiting at a high level since he's been at Auburn. And this year, Auburn did really well in the transfer portal, ranking ninth in the country. And Vanderbilt is a weird history because Auburn is actually only 22 and 22 all time against Vanderbilt. And while I know Auburn is not a dominant football program at all, and they never have been, Vanderbilt is one of the worst football programs of all time. So, with the history of this one not looking good for Auburn, and also Vanderbilt returning 70% of their production from what was actually a decent team last year that beat Auburn by 10 points. This is one to be concerned about if you're Auburn. But this is a game that Hugh Freeze has got to find a way to win if he's going to keep his job because Vanderbilt's talent level is still so low. And Auburn's second bye week comes at a terrible time because it comes right before Mercer, which is the worst team on Auburn's schedule. And Alabama, I would give Auburn a good chance of winning that one, even though Alabama will probably at least be the second best team that Auburn plays because of the history of this rivalry when it's been played at Auburn. And of course, to beat Alabama, Auburn is going to have to play good defense. But I think they might go with the quarterback run a lot in this game because last year Jackson Arnold ran all over Alabama. But this schedule, I think, gives Auburn a chance if Jackson Arnold can improve to get to 8-4. But I could also see them having trouble and only finishing 5-7 again. So now for the point spread prediction games in the grain or games where I think Auburn will be favored to win by a blowout, 20 or more points. And there's three of those: Ball State, South Alabama, and Mercer. Games in the purple are games where I think Auburn will be favored to win by about a touchdown, 6 to 9 points, and there's one of those Kentucky games in the pink are games where I think Auburn will be favored to win by about a field goal, 1 to 5 points, and there's two of those, Missouri and Vanderbilt. Games in the gray are games where I think Auburn will be about a field goal underdog. So there's two of those, Baylor and Arkansas, and games in the yellow are games where I think Auburn will be about a touchdown underdog, 6 to 9 points, and there's three of those: Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Alabama. Games in orange are games where I think Auburn will be a double-digit underdog, so at 10 to 19 points, and there's one of those, Georgia. So Ball State, Auburn should be favored in that one by about 30 points, and Auburn will probably be favored by about 3 touchdowns against South Alabama. And Mercer, I think Auburn will be favored by at least at 40 points. And Kentucky, I think the spread in that one will be about 6 points. And Missouri, that one's in the pink because it's at home. It'd be in the gray if it was on the road. But Auburn, I think, might be favored by a point in that game. And Vanderbilt, I think Auburn will be favored by a point or two, but it wouldn't be surprising if Auburn ends up being a small underdog when it comes time for that game to be played. And Oklahoma, I think, will be favored by, I'll say, 6 points over Auburn. And Alabama, even though I think there's enough of a talent difference between the two teams for this one to be a orange game, I've got it in the yellow because of the history of the rivalry. I think Alabama will be favored in it by, I'll say, 6 points, and Texas A&M I think will be favored to beat Auburn by, I'll say, 6 points, and Georgia. I think the spread in that game will be about 17 points, and Baylor, that one's in the grave because it's a road game, and the same with Arkansas. Those would be pink games if they were home games. But Baylor, I'll say, will be a 3 point favorite over Auburn, and Arkansas. I think they'll be favored by 4 or 5 points over Auburn. So that will be it with this video, and please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.